It's tough to come this far and lose. It hurts. But you are defined in life by the way you respond to defeat. That pit in your stomach, fill it with fire.
I remember that play. Now I know I look African American in that clip, but that really was me. That was back in college, and there was just the lights were reflecting off the helmet, so I looked African American. But that was my touchdown pass. I'm so glad that they were able to pull up a lot of these old clips of me when I won all those championships in so many different sports. You know, humbled about all of that. But church, how's everybody doing today, huh? You guys doing good? You look so, man, it's so great to be with you guys. And, you know, it is the back to school season, and we are in a series here at Celebration Church called The Comeback, because all of us at one point or another, or in some area of our lives, all of us need a comeback from time to time. And last weekend we heard a great message from Pastor Dino Rizzo about making a comeback in your personal life and understanding that no matter what you've done, there's nothing too big that God can't forgive. And this weekend we are going to hear another fantastic message on making a comeback. I just want to remind everyone, including all of our locations, all of our campuses, come on, let's welcome them into the experience today. Good to be with you guys. I want to remind everyone that next weekend, can you believe it? Guess who the guest speaker is next weekend? It's me. That's right. I know you thought the day would never come, but yes, yours truly, I'm preaching next weekend. It is my first Sunday to preach here at Celebration Church since Mother's Day in mid-May. Many of you know that my family and I, we just had this summer, took some extended time off and really got refreshed, got rested. I can honestly tell you, I feel like it's like I'm planting the church all over again, and very refreshed and very excited about being back in the pulpit next Sunday. And it's going to be a fantastic fall. We have so many great things that we're looking forward to sharing with you, and just so many different ways that you can get involved and really experience a God First life at the next level. But this weekend we have with us a very good friend of ours and a very, very special guest. And also this weekend he brought his lovely wife. It is Pastor Robert Morse and his wife Debbie from Gateway Church. Debbie, stand up. Stand up, Debbie. Y'all give Debbie a hand. And we always want to honor the wives when they come. And of course, Pastor Robert and Rose, also Pastor Bobby and Rose, also from Gateway Church. You guys wave to everybody. We're glad that they're here as well. But Robert and Debbie have become very good friends to Carrie and I, and they have shared so much wisdom with us. And of course, Robert, you know, pastors Gateway Church in Dallas. Over 25,000 people now attend Gateway on the weekend. Pastor Robert's also written, I believe, 7 books, including The Blessed Life, which many of us are familiar with, and just about just the way that as we steward resources, how God blesses us as we steward our resources appropriately. And you guys are going to hear a great comeback message from Pastor Robert right now. So I want you to put your hands together and give the best Celebration Church welcome you can. Come on, welcome Pastor Robert Morse.
It's always an honor to be at Celebration. We love Pastor Stovall and Carrie so much, and I know that you are so blessed to have him as your pastor. I want to commend you to allow your pastor to have a sabbatical. You know, it was unheard of for many, many years, and we would give sabbaticals to missionaries, but we didn't realize that pastors of churches needed sabbaticals as well. And it shows that you're a mature congregation to understand that and to allow them that time. And so I'm so grateful you did that. I want to, Debbie, would you just stand up again just for a moment? I'm sorry. But I like to do this. I like to make you think, you know, that I've forgotten what day it is, but today is my wife's birthday. And so happy birthday, sugar. It was all I could do not to say happy birthday all morning long waiting for this. And I knew you were getting madder and madder by the minute. So, and we'll get you some money later. Okay, turn to John chapter 2, please. John chapter 2, or I could say click to John chapter 2. However you read the Bible, just as long as you read the Bible. John chapter 2. And I want to share with you the key to a financial comeback. Every one of us need a financial comeback. Now let me just tell you that John is a very interesting book. John is a gospel, but it is not a synoptic gospel. In other words, Matthew, Mark, and Luke are synoptic gospels. The reason is that Matthew, Mark, and Luke cover the last year of Jesus' ministry. Now, they do cover the birth of his ministry and his baptism in the wilderness, but immediately then, if you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, they will say, after John the Baptist was imprisoned, and that happened 2 years into Jesus' ministry, and they cover the last 2 years. John actually wrote the book of John later in life because no one had recorded the first 2 years of his ministry. So if we only had Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we'd only have the third year of Jesus' ministry. That's why in John, you're going to read things in John you won't read in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. We're going to read the turning of water into wine, his first miracle, John 2. John 3, the conversation with Nicodemus, you must be born again. The most famous verse in the Bible, for God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son, John 3:16, not in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. John 4, the woman at the well. John 5, the man by the pool that was healed. You go all the way through. John 8 is the woman caught in adultery. Jesus said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. That's not in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. John 9, the man born blind that was healed. John 10, where he says, I'm the good shepherd. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I've come that you might have life. That's in John 10, not in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. John 11, the raising of Lazarus from the dead. You just keep going through. Matter of fact, John 13, the washing of the disciples' feet, not recorded in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. We wouldn't have known that he did that at the Last Supper if John hadn't recorded it. And John 14, 15, and 16, many people don't realize this. It's nearly all red letters, but it is what Jesus said at the Last Supper. You remember the Last Supper? Leonardo da Vinci was there, and he painted that. Okay, so anyway, what Jesus said at the Last Supper, 14, 15, 16, where he said, I'm going away. But don't be disturbed. Don't be afraid. I'm coming back. And he goes through this. That's all John. That's the Last Supper conversation. And John 17 is the prayer he prayed in the garden when Peter and James fell asleep. And he came back and said, you guys are asleep. John was awake. John's listening. And he records that prayer. So it's an amazing book. So John chapter 2, we have the first miracle that Jesus ever did. And I want to show you from this miracle the key to having a comeback, a financial comeback, but a comeback in any area of your life, really. John chapter 2, look at verse 1. It says, on the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee. Now, remember the words, the third day, because I'm going to bring that back and tell you why it says on the third day. And the mother of Jesus was there. Now, both Jesus and his disciples were invited. Just want you to notice they were invited. They didn't just crash this thing. They were invited to the wedding. And when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, they have no wine. Jesus said to her, woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour is not yet come. His mother said to the servants, whatever he says to you, do it. Remember that line. Whatever he says to you, do it. Now there were set there 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification of the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. Jesus said to them, fill the water pots with water, and they filled them up to the brim. Remember, they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, draw some out now and take it to the master of the feast. And they took it, and when the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine and did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, the master of the feast called the bridegroom, and he said to him, every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then the inferior. You have kept the good wine until now. Now, let me give you some explanation about this passage. Most theologians believe that this is actually John's wedding, the disciple who wrote the book of John. A couple of reasons. Notice that Mary was invited and she was concerned about the wine. Mary's sister was Salome. Salome was John's mother. So Mary's the aunt here. Jesus and the disciples were invited to the wedding. They didn't just come, they were invited. And Jesus is John's cousin. So most would understand and believe that's why he's writing this, and that's why Mary would have been concerned, because they ran out of wine. John also, when he writes his book, he never names himself. He does this tremendously. He calls himself the other disciple. Or here's one I really like. He calls himself the disciple whom Jesus loved. Now, personally, I'm a little suspect of calling yourself that. You know, it's kind of like, you know, when you're reading Exodus, it says that Moses was the most humble man on the face of the earth. You know who wrote that? Moses. So John writes, and the disciple whom Jesus loved leaned on his breast. You know, he likes to write things like that. Or he calls himself the other disciple. And he writes it this way: Peter and the other disciple ran to the tomb, but the other disciple got there first. So anyway, it's real possible this is John's wedding, and that's why Jesus is there, and that's why Mary is concerned. Now, they run out of wine on the third day. What you have to know about weddings in those days is that the bride and groom did not go away on a honeymoon after the wedding, you know, which is the pits, but they didn't do that. They stayed in town, and for 7 days, they had a feast, a celebration. That was, the reception lasted 7 days. And this is on the third day. And the bride and groom were treated like a king and queen, which kind of made up for not going on a Carnival cruise, but not completely. But anyway, on the third day, they ran out of wine. Okay, this is why Mary's concerned. This was going to be a scandal and a shame to her family. A scandal in the community. Everyone would remember that they took off work for a week and had to go home after the third day because they didn't plan enough. And so she is concerned. I mean, she comes to Jesus and says, they have no wine. They have no wine. She's concerned about this. But I have to wonder, why did she go to Jesus? I don't know if you have ever thought about this, but why'd she go to Jesus? And she says, they have no wine. I'm wondering, now I'm not trying to start a new theology here or anything like that. I'm just a little comedic conjecture, if you'll allow me for a moment. I just wonder if some strange things happened around Jesus' house when he was growing up. You know, I wonder if like a family reunion, if Mary had to call Jesus over and said, listen, Jesus, listen, you need to get down in the water and swim like the rest of the kids.